Ok, puedo llamar en cuanto acabe el Zoom meeting a las 9:30, a las 10. Ahorita te llamo. Gracias. Ok. I don't see Louis. Tony, you see Louis?
Let me look. Hold on. I was changing my background really quick. Is my background backwards?
No, it's fine.
It's fine. No, I don't see him in here yet.
Calling him. Voicemail.
You've reached 626.
I don't see him in here yet.
You've reached 626-82.
I'm getting voicemails. Mm-hmm. Well, we have 1 minute. We need to let everybody in.
You've reached 626-824-8658.
I confirmed with him last night.
Take a call.
You saw the text, right?
I'll get back to you.
Okay, let's admit everybody.
Cross your fingers. Yeah. Yeah, we made the appointments, and I have one at the.
We will lose country. That's what's all right. So now.
Morning, guys. We're gonna wait 5 minutes to start. We're at 9:35. Our speaker is running late. He's in another call. He just texted me that he's behind a few minutes. Tony, can you admit everybody, please?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning, Jorge. Hi.
Good morning.
Hi, everyone.
Connor!
Mark, what's up, buddy?
What's up, man?
You're looking great today.
Likewise.
Yeah, let's go, motherfuckers. It's MAGA. Yeah, fuck.
Okay, we have 3 more minutes. We're gonna start at 9:35.
9:35.
Louis on, George.
Yeah, can you make him a co-host? Okay, Louis, you're a co-host now.
All right, great. Hopefully everybody can hear me.
We're gonna start at in 2 minutes.
Okay, wonderful. I'm just,
Guys, if you go to the chat room, you're gonna see a PDF, 3 pages. Download it. That's gonna be the presentation for today. If you don't know how to get it, just type your email. We can send it to you guys. Make sure that you put your titles rep name, all your information. We can send this information to you.
Do it now.
so let me ask a question as we're kind of waiting here. The screen share, so you have it teed up. I don't have to worry about that.
I can I make you a co-host so you can
Okay.
Upload your PDF, but I can do it for you. It's not a problem.
Well, that's okay, because what I did was I turned the PDF into an actual presentation, so it goes a bit smoother. But I think if everybody has that handout, that would be a good supplemental piece to kind of go along with it, if that's
So
okay.
you guys need to download it. Make sure that you download that, please.
Yeah.
But you let me know, Louis. I can show it on the screen, or you can do it.
Okay, I can, let me put the presentation up. This way
Perfect.
it's a bit easier to follow and not so academic, you know. Let me,
Good morning, Jorge. Could you please repost the link for that? Because we don't see it on this chat anymore.
It's on the, yeah, no problem. I will put it again. It's the first thing that I posted today, but I'm gonna redo it again one more
Yes,
time.
but if we log on after you, we cannot see it.
Oh, okay, cool. You know what? The little thing to upload disappeared on my chat room. I don't know why. Can you send me your email right now? And I will send it to you. My email is jmesa@pct.com, or you can type it and I will send it to you.
and as people are doing that, I'm gonna, like I said, I'll throw the presentation up there to make it a little easier, and I'll start going through it. Oops.
Well, one more time, good morning, guys. Thank you for being on this special presentation of Title Tuesday. No Title Tuesday until next year, but Prop 19, it's key for you guys to understand. You need to master Prop 19. You really need to understand. It's pretty confusing. We're getting calls and we don't know what to answer anymore, because even us, we're confused. So please pay attention. There's nobody better than Louis. Louis is the best trainer for Prop 19 that I know. So thank you so much, Louis.
Well, my pleasure. First of all, I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to do this. For those of you that perhaps already know, I will just remind you, and for those that don't, I'll introduce myself. My name is Louis Lujan. I am the Government Affairs Director for the Greater Downey Association of Realtors. And my main responsibility is to keep all of the members of the association and everybody in the organization in the region apprised of anything going on the federal, state, and local level of governments that affect the real estate industry, which is quite a bit this year and last year. And one of the major pieces of legislation that will be going into effect, that it was a proposition passed by the voters in November called Prop 19. And it's been in the news quite a bit. You've probably seen all the commercials. Everybody was behind it. There seemed to be a large uptick in support for the proposition. I'll get into that in a bit as to why that was and what that means. But long story short, it's the most fundamental piece of legislation, I would say, in the past 20 years that's going to have the most impact on the real estate industry. So we'll go into some of that right now. Quick question. I keep getting little pop-ups saying that people are in the waiting room. Do I have to admit them, or is that someone else doing that?
I'll take care of it, Louis.
Okay, thank you. And also, I can't really see the chat screen, so if anyone does have questions, feel free to interrupt me as we go through. I can answer them as I go through the slides here.
Actually, I'll take care of that, Louis. I'll go ahead and read the questions over to you.
Okay, thank you. And please interrupt me because I want to be able to answer them as the questions are fresh, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so with that said, let's kind of jump in here. I want to, as I'm giving an overview of Prop 19, let me just put it into kind of simple plain English here. Proposition 19 does two things specifically. One, it talks about and it changes the way intergenerational transfers are done or inheritance properties. So it fundamentally changes the way people can inherit properties, or the other way around, the way people can pass down properties. We'll talk about that, obviously. And the other big area that it changes in the law is what is referred to as tax portability. In the past, a person can go from property A to property B if they met certain criteria and keep the original tax base only in certain counties. Well, now that's expanded across the state. But again, there's two areas that Prop 19 fundamentally changes: tax portability and intergenerational transfers or inheritance properties. I want to first talk about the tax portability portion of the law, the new law, Prop 19. And that's exactly what you see here on the screen. It adds 3 sections to the Constitution. It limits the tax increases for those 3 categories of people: senior citizens, people that are disabled, or victims of natural disasters. And again, it allows for property transfers, tax transfers without loopholes. But I want to give everybody a kind of a fair warning. It doesn't create a 100% tax loophole for people. You're still going to pay taxes and people are still going to pay more. However, they're not going to pay as much as they otherwise would have. There's a formula that they're applying to the equation. Again, we'll obviously get into that. All right, so since we're talking about the portion of Prop 19 that deals with tax portability, let me just kind of give you an idea of the tax revenue that it's going to generate for local governments, which is quite a bit. Homeowners are also going to benefit from being able to stay in a single residence for longer. These are just the overviews of the bill itself. Children inheriting parents' properties face higher property tax rates. We'll talk about that. Dollars must be allocated to education. What this screen really is saying is this, is that the revenue that Prop 19 is going to generate is substantial. It, according to the state economists, is going to generate more revenue than any single piece of legislation, any single piece of tax increase in history. And that is because the state has, I guess, found a way, is maybe not the right terminology, but they have figured out how to really tap into the revenue that can be generated from property taxes that has not been tapped into, say, in 20, 30, maybe even more years than that. So the amount of revenue is immense that Prop 19 is forecasted to bring to the state. And where that revenue goes is interesting, and how people were able to get on board and support the bill gives you a glimpse into just how much dollars it's going to raise. For example, firefighters, police, the unions, teachers, all were behind it. And that wasn't because they felt that Prop 19 was this great bill. Frankly, it was politics. And I'll share with you a little more how that happened in a bit, but that's what that was. Okay. So here's some general questions that always come up when I'm talking about Prop 19. These questions that you're going to see in the next few slides are questions that I've been getting and I've been gathering, and I wanted to share. So what are the most significant changes made by Prop 19 regarding the transfer of the taxable value? So this question specifically deals with the tax portability portion of Prop 19 and what the biggest differences are between now and pre-Prop 19. One, it allows the seller of the principal residence to transfer the tax base to a new property anywhere in California. You're not limited to specific counties anymore. Two, it allows that transfer of the value with certain adjustments to the tax basis if the replacement property is of greater value than the sold residence. Now, here's the most important part, in my opinion. This is where I just said a few minutes ago, this is not a free pass on taxes. And that's, frankly, I think one of the biggest misconceptions, even during the advertising of Prop 19 in the commercials. Nobody ever said, hey, you're going to just pay less taxes, right? Well, that's what point number 2 means. You're going to be able to move from property A to property B if you meet certain criteria, but you're not going to be able to take the tax basis from the original property, as is. You're going to pay more, bottom line. Just not going to be as much more. Okay. And number 3, it permits these transfers up to 3 times, but it's unlimited for those who are victims of a natural disaster, specifically the wildfires. I always kind of like in the back of my mind to think of the unfortunate event of what if there's an earthquake, right? I mean, that there's no boundary to that. So that would allow a lot of people to take advantage if they're over 55. Anyway, all right, so that's that. Another question I get, can the replacement property be of greater value? Simple answer is yes. Now, here's where the formula comes in. Do not worry about understanding this the first time. I always like to joke with people and I say, remember when we were sitting in high school, whatever math class you were in, and never thought you would need word problems? Well, here we are, and good luck trying to figure it out, but here it is. Equal or lesser value subject to the inflation index of 105% if purchased within 1 year, and 110% if purchased within 2 years. The tax basis of the original principal residence may transfer to the replacement principal residence if those 2 conditions are met. That's if it's of equal or lesser value, the new property, property B, let's call it. Okay. Now, if property B, the new property, is of greater value, the taxable value of the replacement, the new property, is calculated by adding the difference, okay, adding the difference between the full cash value, not the taxable base, the cash value of the original property, and plus the cash value of the replacement property. Okay. I kind of tried my best to put it in a formula. You'll see it in a second. But what this slide comes down to is one particular important point. It's not, the point is not for you to understand the math behind this right now. The important part is to understand that when you're talking to your clients and amongst each other, this is not a free pass on taxes. This is saying that you're going to pay more taxes if you take advantage of Prop 19, but the impact of those new taxes is going to be far less than it otherwise would have been if you were just to move out of the property that you've owned since 1980, 1970, whatever, and move into a property that you bought today, obviously, because the values of the properties today are just so much more, even if you downsize, right? So if you move from property A to property B, the value is going to be a lot more, and you're still going to pay more taxes. You're just going to be subject to this new formula, which, by the way, it does reduce your taxes quite a bit in terms of comparing to what it otherwise would have been, because that's how much the values have gone up, as we all know. But it's just really, really important to know this is not a free pass on taxes. You cannot tell people you're going to be able to take your original tax base from 1970 on that property and transfer it to this new property you found who knows where. That's $1 million more than than the value of the original property. So please keep that in mind. It's very, very important to know to not to give clients accurate information, obviously. Okay. Before I go in and talk a little bit about this part, let me just pause and see if there's any questions or anything so far. So far, we've been talking about the tax portability portion of Prop 19, and we're going to switch gears a bit. That's why I'm kind of asking to see if anybody has any questions.
There is one question that says, can you give me a math example?
Jennifer, of course, would ask that question, right? She wants me to give her a mathematical example. I can, although I would have to literally sketch it out. And I do have somewhat of a formula in a few slides where you'll see if property A is worth this much, then property B is that much. You'll kind of see it in a second. So I think that was Jennifer that asked that question.
Perfect.
So,
Another question from Mary is this taking the place of Prop 13, 90, and 60?
okay, now that's a good question in terms of how to understand Prop 19. The answer is no, it does not. There's misconception that Prop 19 is taking the place of Prop 60, of Prop 13. And no, what Prop 19 does specifically is that it adds sections to the California Constitution. And as such, it just adds to the existing laws. It does not take place of it. However, in doing so, it does make some portions of Prop 60, Prop 13, and other bills irrelevant. And they'll be amended, if you will, but they're still in existence. There's nowhere in Prop 19 that specifically states that it takes the place of Prop 60 or Prop 13. It's just the way these initiatives work. So no, it doesn't take the place of them, it just amends them, and it adds certain sections to the actual Constitution of the state of California.
Thank you. That's all that I see.
Yep. So you probably have all took time already to read what this means, severely disabled. All this means, I wanted to throw this slide in here because severely disabled in California has a very broad definition. It could mean anything from a physical impairment to someone that has severe asthma or for whatever the reason. So my point of bringing this slide up is you actually may have clients that would qualify under the provisions of Prop 19 without even knowing it. They may, they may not know they're severely disabled, or they may, maybe going to the doctor soon and be qualified as that. So this portion of Prop 19 actually allows a lot more people than you think to take advantage of Prop 19. And it's a difficult conversation to have, of course, are you severely disabled? But it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Okay. All right, so how many times can a qualified homeowner take advantage of this tax basis transfer? And how often can victims of natural disasters use the exemption? Simply put, 3 times. And if you're the victim of a natural disaster, it is technically unlimited because you can't predict how many natural disasters will occur. Okay, when does it go into effect? Beginning April 1st, 2021, Prop 19 applies to the April 1 is when it goes into effect. Now I want to give you some word of caution, and you'll see in the next slide here, there's some confusion over when Prop 19 actually goes into effect, simply because of this slide here. And let me just explain it in simple English. The Prop 19, the way it was written for the tax portability part of the bill, says that it's going to go into effect April 1st. But for the intergenerational transfer portion, there's a different date. And then you have to also take into account when bills or when initiatives rather are passed by the people of the state of California, there's a January 1st date that has been historically applied to them as to when they go into effect. So somebody, simply put, kind of messed up on the language of the bill, and there's some confusion as to when it goes into effect. My advice to you is to seek the advice of a real estate attorney as to when this, when people can take advantage of it, only because if you have an existing transaction and the people qualify under the provisions of Prop 19, but yet it doesn't say it goes into effect April 1st, but historically January 1st has been the date. So, that's an attorney that's going to have to give you advice on that. If you want to take a strictly conservative approach, I would say just wait to April 1st, but that's a risk assessment that you all have to do. But I've been getting a lot of questions about this. This is probably the second most popular question as to when it actually can be applied and when it goes into effect. So the other thing I'll mention is that CAR does have a legal hotline that you can call, and I know they've been getting a lot of questions on this as well. Okay. Okay, so can a replacement property be purchased prior to the original property being sold? Simple answer is yes. There's no waiting period or no timeline that has to be followed. You can buy a new property prior to the original one being sold and still take advantage of Prop 19. Okay, so this is back to, I believe it was Jennifer's question, kind of. We're leading into that at least. So how are the tax revenues generated by Prop 19 to be allocated? I want to give you a little bit of a history as to why Prop 19 seemed to have so much support. A couple years ago, CAR tried to pass a bill very similar to Prop 19, but it was only dealing with tax portability. It was not dealing with intergenerational transfers. And what happened was, if you recall, Prop 19 was defeated at the, well, it didn't even get anywhere. They dropped it before it can even have any legs on the ballot, and it failed as a result. Now, this time around, what happened was the CAR, the California State Legislature, certain key members of the Senate, the Assembly, the governor's office, the lobbyists up in the state, all got together and analyzed why the original Prop 19 failed. And what they came to, at least in terms of a conclusion, was that there wasn't enough pieces or slices of the pie to go around. So this year, what they did was they got together with the fire, the police unions, they got together with other key unions, the teachers, the biggest unions of the state, and said, what can we do to get your support on Prop 19? And there were basically two things that came back. They said, one, give us some revenue from Prop 19. And B, promise that there's going to be some affordable housing for people of our unions. And that's what Prop 19 exactly did. And that's why when you saw the commercials, you saw a fire behind it, police behind it, teachers were talking about how great it was. I'm going to be frank with you. It really has nothing to do with the tax portability or the fact that, you know, properties are now inherited and transferred differently. It really came down to revenue. The unions, each in their respective corners, saw that there was going to be a lot of revenue that would be available to them. So they jumped on board and supported Prop 19. And as a result, it passed. It was really a political play, and that's how things work up in Sacramento. So I wanted to kind of give you some political insight as to why Prop 19 passed so you can understand. It's that old saying, you know, cash is king. Well, that's what happened with Prop 19. Okay. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the transfers. This part of the bill is easier to understand. At least in my opinion. All right, so if I pass my principal residence on to my child or grandchildren, will the property be reassessed? You can also think of the question in reverse, right? If I inherit a property. So long as the property continues to be used as a family home, the answer is no. Simply put, if you inherit a property or if you pass a property down and that property is going to be used as a primary residence, the property will not get reassessed or the taxes will not go up. Now there is a little formula again here, but you know, we'll get into that in a second. I don't want to, I kind of want to stay away from trying to understand the math behind it right now, at least. I want you to understand, at least with this part, it's very simple. If someone inherits a property and they are not going to use it as a primary residence, your taxes will go up because the property will be reassessed. Okay.
Question.
Yes.
What if the home is in a trust?
It doesn't matter. And I get that question all the time. If the property is in a trust, if it's in an LLC, the people that drafted the bill, they knew that that was going to be an issue, and they did not exempt those situations, either fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, right? Now, some people will look at it and say, well, that's great because that means more properties will be on the market and we can sell them. Other people will say, well, hold on, I'm planning to inherit a property and I'm going to use it as an investment and rent it out. So it's not so great. That's why when CAR internally was trying to get support for this bill, there was a big division amongst membership, at least for this provision, this part of the bill. So it really depends on how you look at it, right?
Okay, there is another question as well.
Yes.
How will they know if it stays a family home?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, look, I mean, I don't know is the simple answer. I mean, there's no such thing as a, you know, a Prop 19 inheritance police out there. But, you know, look, I mean, somewhere along the line, if someone's doing something, you know, that's not according to law, someone somewhere will find out. So I guess it's a risk assessment. And, you know, the honest truth is I don't know how someone will find out, but that's a risk. So, you know, if you want to roll the dice and just hope nobody finds out, I guess that's up to that individual. But there is no, the question can be asked like this. Is there an enforcement mechanism put in place in the actual bill? The answer is no. Okay, there's no enforcement mechanism, but that doesn't mean that you can go out and skirt the law, right?
Okay, so I have two more questions for you.
Yes.
What about multiple properties within a trust? Is one.
So multiple, let me make sure I'm understanding. So if multiple properties are in a trust and those properties are going to be inherited or transferred, depending on what side you're on, is that the question, how this will affect it?
I'm not sure. It was from Jennifer.
Okay. It's somewhat,
yes.
The question is somewhat of a, well, look, it doesn't matter as if one of those properties are going to be used as a primary residence, that one property does not get reassessed. But the question's a bit,
yeah,
you know,
so if it is inherited.
Okay. If there are multiple properties, the legislation is set up so that only one property can benefit from Prop 19. If there's multiple properties, unfortunately, you have to pick one, I guess, and live in it if you want to take advantage of Prop 19. The other two properties are subject to increase because you cannot live in 3 properties at once.
Okay, and another question is, how long do they have to live in the house as primary residence after inheriting?
Well, forever, essentially. There's no time for you. The law doesn't specifically say you can be in a primary residence for 5 years, for 10 years, and once you move out, it gets reassessed.
And do you know if it has to be a child who inherits the home, or can it be another family member?
It has to, okay, that's a good question. The way the law is written, it specifically states child or grandchildren. So yeah, that answers the question in reverse, right? So.
Okay, and another one from Jennifer is, what about a vacation property? I thought I read something about primary and vacation question.
Prop 19 does not address vacation homes, but again, it doesn't matter. These scenarios that are like these what ifs, you got to understand when you read the language of the bill or any bill, they're very specific. So for example, if the bill specifically reads, you know, a family home, primary residence, and then there's a what if question about a vacation home, that just means that doesn't apply. So it doesn't matter. I mean, if you're going to live in that home, whether it's a vacation home or whether it's a, you know, whatever, you can take advantage of Prop 19 because it's being transferred down to you and it's becoming your principal primary residence.
Okay.
Look, it's real simple, right? If you're going to inherit a property and it's going to be your principal primary residence, Prop 19 applies, period. It doesn't matter what the property is used for, or, you know, if it's a vacation home or whatever. It's just kind of straightforward in that regard, at least.
Okay. Do you get reassessed once you sell while it was your primary residence?
The minute the minute it does not become a principal primary residence, you're getting reassessed. The minute you move out or the minute you decide to sell it, or, well, of course, when the transaction is done, not the minute literally, but when the transaction is done is when it gets reassessed. The minute it stops being your principal primary residence, Prop 19 does not apply. So for example, if you inherit a property today and you live in it for, I don't know, let's say it's your principal primary residence for 6 months. When you decide to sell it and that transaction is finished, Prop 19 no longer applies to that property.
Okay. And I have 3 different questions that are pretty similar. It says, if I have 3 investments and I give them to 3 different children and these properties become primary residence, will that be reassessed as well?
It will not. Those 3 properties will be taken individually because you've passed them to 3 different humans, 3 different individuals, right? So there's, you know, you can have 10 children and have 10 properties. It doesn't matter. they'll be able to take advantage of Prop 19 so long as they live individually in those individual properties.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, there were more questions, or were those?
There is one more. It says, can you
Okay.
please go over some example numbers? But
Yeah, I keep getting the number question. Okay. Yeah, let me kind of get into there's an example here I have on a slide.
okay, let's get to the slide once you get there.
No problem. Yeah, man, they want me to be a math teacher here. That's okay. I can do that. Let me go along with the slides here. Here we go. All right. People wanted to see some numbers, right? All right. I'm going to let people absorb that for a second before I start talking, because it's not, well, there's numbers. That's why. Okay, so as we're kind of looking at that, I'm going to preface this with something real simple. Well, two things. One, there will be a calculator on the state website. It's not up yet, but there's going to be a calculator where you can actually plug numbers in and it'll spit out the answer. But in the meantime, I'm going to do my best to explain. Now, also, well, let me just read the question. If the property is transferred to a child or grandchild and because it must be used as a family home, primary residence, what will the new tax basis be if at the time of the transfer, the property value is more than $1 million over the original tax base? Okay. Now, there's kind of two scenarios, right? If the property value is more than $1 million over the original tax base, and the situation where it's not. Now, keep in mind, this is not the value of the property. This is the original tax base we're dealing with, okay? So if the property is valued, it's greater than $1 million over the original tax base. If that's the situation, at the time of the transfer, okay, over the $1 million over the original tax base, $1 million is the threshold that they're dealing with in the formula. Then the new tax basis will be the value of the property at the time of the transfer minus $1 million. Okay. If the property value is greater than the original tax basis plus $1 million, then the new tax base at the time is going to be the new property value minus $1 million. That's the formula, if you will. Now, here's the example, though. Okay, this is like the example. I don't want you to worry about the formula because people get lost in it. If the original tax base was $500,000, the original tax base, okay, we're not talking value, we're talking tax base, was $500,000, and at the time of the transfer, the property is valued at $2 million, then the new taxable value will be $1 million, because 2 million minus 1 million is $1 million. Okay, so absorb that for a second. It's pretty simple, but it's not. So again, if the original tax base was 500,000, okay, and at the time of the transfer, the property is valued at 2 million, then the new taxable value is 2 million minus 1 million. Therefore, it's $1 million. The other way to think of it is this, is that you're going to pay more taxes, period, but they're a lot less than they otherwise would have been. Now, there are certain scenarios where if they're using it as a primary residence, again, we're only talking about the inheritance properties here. There are certain scenarios where this wouldn't apply, and that would be if the property is, less than $1 million. But that's a whole different scenario, and that's, I mean, it's possible, right? Like with inheritance properties, but with the way the values are going, most properties are going to fall into this category. So, or at least come close to it at the time of the transfer, because I mean, if properties were bought way back in the 70s or 60s or even before that, there's a high probability, especially large properties. All right, let me kind of move on here.
So Tony asked, what if we sold at 1 million and purchased at 800,000?
So say that again. If they purchased originally, like way back when, and they bought something for less expensive, is that what they're saying?
What if we sold at 1 million and purchased at 800,000? Doesn't specify.
So they downsized. Well, the assumption is they downsize. Well, even if they didn't downsize, the value they bought less. Well, then this doesn't apply. It's because the bill is specifically assuming that properties have gone up so much that scenario would not exist. But if it does exist, then Prop 19 doesn't really apply, because they're going to be assessed at the new value because it's less. And I'm hoping I'm understanding the question right, but
No, I think the question was basically if they sold the property at 1 million today, but they originally bought it at 800,000, so a difference of $200,000.
Oh, okay. So if the difference is 200,000, when you plug in the numbers, the new taxable value is going to be very small. Yeah, it's going to be real small, because the difference is not more than $1 million. The difference has to be more than $1 million.
Okay.
So in that scenario, they got kind of lucky. That's not going to be a problem.
Got it.
The tax increases are going to be very minimal in that case.
Got it.
Like really, really minimal. Prop 19 in that situation works out pretty good.
Okay. And for someone over 55 and wanting to take advantage of Prop 19, what if they sold for 1 million and purchased a new home for 1.5 million?
So they purchased a new home at 1.5, and they're over 55 years of age, and the original property was purchased at 1. So what you're saying is that they spent $500,000 more, and they want to know what the reassessment is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, in that particular case, the numbers are like dead on, and the reassessment, at least in my head right now, would be the same. It would not be really reassessed.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's only a $500,000 difference. Yeah, exactly. So in that particular scenario, Prop 19 works out quite well as well, because you have to, so when you deal with these numbers, you have to understand that the people that made these rules were politicians, right? And not realtors. So what they're thinking of, and you got to kind of think in reverse here. You got to take your hat as realtors off and think as politicians. They're thinking, in what scenarios can we generate the most revenue? And the answer is when you deal with properties that have been, the value has gone up so much that if people were to sell, the values are going to be 2 million more, 1 million more, 3 million more. So in scenarios where we deal with in everyday life, right? Like the properties are 500,000 more, or, $700,000 more, $300,000 more. Prop 19 really doesn't affect them that much in those scenarios, because that's not what the politicians were. They're not going to generate much revenue from that. They're dealing with situations where revenue is, we're talking millions, 2 millions, this and that. So I always kind of like to remind people, try to think in reverse a bit, and then you won't answer your question, but you'll have at least kind of an idea, right, as to whether or not it would take effect.
Okay.
All right. So
one more scenario that someone just asked.
Okay.
And then we can move on. So let's say they sell property bought for 60,000, now valued at 450,000. They would need to buy within 105%, so 473,000. What would the new tax base be? What is more common for the person inheriting the property to move in or not?
Okay, well, so that question has like specific numbers in it, and it's difficult to answer right now because I don't have a calculator. But because the threshold is not over $1 million, the impact is going to be not significant according to the bill. When I say significant, what's significant to you may not be significant to me, right? So I mean, in terms of property values and tax increases, the significance is not going to be that much. I don't know the exact number. I can find out once the calculator's up. But if someone is used to paying a very small tax bill, say, you know, $1,000 or whatever, their tax increase in this situation is going to go up, you know, a couple thousand. That could be significant to them.
Okay.
But in terms of, you know, because they're used to paying taxes that are very minimal. But in terms of properties as a whole, it's not significant. But to that specific example, I in my opinion, would say it's pretty significant. Because someone asked me the other day, well, it was a similar question. They said, look, these people bought a property for, I think it was like 80,000 way back when, and now the new assessed value is a lot higher. And even though you and I won't think the property taxes are high because we bought, you know, at 300,000 or 400,000, to them it is. And I said, yeah, you're absolutely right. So that's like an individual conversation, I guess you got to have with them. But I wish I can give you an exact number. I just can't right now. But once that calculator is up, or even afterwards, after the presentation, I'll get you the exact number and you can find out. Again, this is the February date of when it takes effect. So we all kind of read that slide there. Intergenerational transfers previously exempted, not only the transfer of the tax basis of the primary, but also up to $1 million. Is this exemption still available? No. Simply put, you cannot inherit a property under the old rules anymore. There's no way, the other way to think of it is there's no way to inherit a property under these new rules where you're gonna get around paying more taxes. At some point, you're gonna catch up, even if it's a primary residence. I mean, again, I want to be very upfront and frank with everybody about this. Prop 19 was good for some and very bad for others, and that's why it was split amongst even CAR's leadership. There's no way under Prop 19 you're going to get around paying more taxes, bottom line. The impact of paying more taxes is going to be less of an impact than it otherwise would have been without Prop 19 assurances and protections. But we're just looking at a new world, which is why in the beginning, why I said this is a very significant change to our industry. There's a different conversation you have to have with people now about inheriting properties or transferring them or primary residences or using a family home that's been in the family for generations as a rental property. That's a whole different conversation now.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, yes.
Okay, if you do a transfer now into a trust, or later into a trust, will that affect it's your own trust?
So again, the fact that okay, simple answer is there's no way around it. Because there's certain trustees that have to be named in the trust, and those trustees are actual humans, and there's no more trust protections anymore under Prop 19. And the legislators that wrote the law understood that people would try to do that. So they did not exempt trusts. Let me answer it like this. There's nothing specific in Prop 19 that exempts trusts or LLCs. That, however, does not mean that somewhere someone is going to try to challenge that in court. And I anticipate those cases coming down the pike because trusts.
I met my mother, who's owned it for 20 years. She's going to put it into her own trust, or she's going to form a trust for herself.
Okay, and then
it would still be her property under her. She's still the trustee of her own trust.
Right. Correct. Yeah. Then there's no change. Yeah. Prop 19 doesn't offer any additional protections for her at all. She's just moving it into a trust. There's no change of status under the law if it goes into a trust is how it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I have two questions.
Yep.
So one is, so if someone is selling a home right now that they've owned for 50 years in LA County and are buying a lower priced home in Riverside County, is it better for them to buy now or wait until after April 1st when Prop 19 takes effect?
Yeah, okay, excellent question. Now, I'm not giving you legal advice on this one, but the question, is it better? That's an opinion question. I mean, if you want to take a conservative approach and tell the clients, look, because Prop 19, there's still some gray areas and you want to wait, that's what you would say. You would tell them to wait. If you want to be a little riskier about it and say, look, all the things haven't been ironed out with Prop 19, there might be something that comes up, there may not be, but that doesn't matter, hey, let's do it now. But I would do that under the advice and at least consultation of a real estate attorney. So again, is it better? I mean, it's more a question of risk assessment. Are you, risk averse? Are you not? And that's how I would answer that. If the question were thrown at me, I personally would wait just because that's how I am, but that may not apply to everybody, right? So.
Okay, second question is, these rules are only moving forward, correct? I'm referring to inheriting a property. If you inherit a property 20 years ago, you won't be affected, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So that's something that's a good question, actually. It's a very good question. And that's right. The law doesn't retroactively affect everybody that inherited property in 1973 or whatever. I mean, yeah, correct. This is going forward. That's how laws work. Yeah. Can you imagine? There would be a revolt. Yeah. So
let's move forward.
Okay. All right. So this is a slide that I just kind of always like to kind of throw something in there, but let me get off of the share screen here. So a couple of things I want to remind people of. Prop 19 literally changes fundamentally the way that transfers are done or properties are inherited, depending on what side you're on. And also the way people can quote unquote downsize, or if they're over 55, move into a new property because the values are so much more in many cases, right? So you really, really have to read up on the nuances of the bill. In this presentation, could have easily went on for 2 hours because the bill is that detailed, but this was designed just to give you a broad overview. That's number one. So please, email me, let me know if you want the presentation, if you want I have the actual printout, and I didn't want to bore you with all the text, but I actually have the printout of the bill itself. I can give it to you. And number two, I'd like to share this with people for those that that have been to Sacramento with us. Let's see, I know Jennifer was on here. I see Monica, a couple of other people that perhaps have been to Sacramento. Yeah, of course, that have been to Sacramento with us to talk to legislators, that have went into the governor's office with us. It is extremely important to do that, because when things like Prop 19 come up and we don't have a seat at the table and we do not let people, the legislators, the governor's office specifically know why it's a good or a bad idea, bills get passed that may not be so good, or bills get passed that have significant impact and we didn't have a say in it. So I always encourage people, contribute to the Realtor Action Fund. I know we always come around to people's offices, we ask for $20, but it is a very minimal ask for impacts that have such a significant impact on the way we do business. Prop 19, you will not see a bill having so much significant impact on our industry in years, but they come around. These are what I call like these large earthquakes in the fabric of the real estate industry, and they happen, every 10 years or so. So please keep that in mind as you consider whether or not you're going to contribute to the Realtor Action Fund and join us in Sacramento and lobby with us as well. Okay. That's pretty much all I had, unless there are other questions from other people. I'd be more than happy to answer them right now.
I have a question.
Yes.
Somebody owns, a friend of mine owns a couple of properties, and she is thinking of, when she passed away, she's an older lady, she wants to give it to her church. So this is a nonprofit. How do they get around that, or does that apply as well?
So, okay. And the question is, let me make sure I'm understanding. They've owned a property for, a long time, and the value of the property has probably went up significantly. And rather than transferring it to a child or a grandchild, they want to transfer it to a nonprofit or a church. And they want to know if Prop 19 applies to that scenario. Is that
correct?
Okay. Again, when you read a law, keep in mind, they're very specific. The law specifically says child or grandchild. In other words, Prop 19 would not apply in that scenario.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Louis, we got a question here.
Yes.
And this is, okay, let me ask. The law takes effect February 21st. As to the parent-child transfer, if someone died before the prop takes effect, technically the children's interest vest at the date of the death. A lot of people don't transfer the deed for a while. So if the property isn't transferred until after February 21st, will the old rule not apply? This is not a primary residence.
Okay, that's an excellent question. Now, there's two ways to look at this, okay? The law is very specific, and it says that it goes into effect as of a specific date. So if there are any events or circumstances that happen prior, the law doesn't apply because the law hasn't went into effect. If there are any circumstances or events that happened after, the law does take effect because it's after the date. That's one way to look at it. And that's a very strict interpretation of the law itself. And that's how probably most people would look at it. But the other way to look at it is that, there's certain transactions that won't close. Some of them are going to happen before, some of them are going to happen after. There's a lot of gray area. And that's reality, right? I mean, that's not such a strict interpretation of the law because that's not how life works. I mean, there's gray areas, there's scenarios, there's circumstances, there's this or that. And that's why I always like to tell people, if you're dealing with that kind of a situation, don't even think twice about getting a real estate attorney, because you're going to need some documentation. You're going to need some official advice. You're going to need a consultation with him or her in that scenario.
Hey, Louis, this is Nelson. Earlier in the class, there was a question asked, how do we know that it's going to stay as a primary home in the family? And talking to Carol Kwan a lot recently, she did a presentation for us. The county will verify, the tax assessors will verify with death certificates and birth certificates of the inheritance. So if my grandmother is passed away and I'm inheriting the property, first my parents need to be deceased, and and it has to be the bloodline. So if it's my father's grandmother, right, and my dad gets divorced with my mom, as long as it's blood related, it stays in the family. So there's a tweak with divorce issues too, but overall, the point is they will verify with death certificates and birth certificates, and whoever's inheriting the property has to prove that to the assessors to keep it.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And that's why, two things. One is, that's why I don't like to get into the hairy nuances of the law and how things work in this presentation, because, that could be a topic in and of itself.
Correct.
But you're absolutely right. And number two, that's why, again, I always like to tell people, if you're thinking about finding a creative way to try to get around taxes, don't do it. Somewhere, someone will find out. Prop 19 is not a bill or a law that's designed to try to find creative loopholes around it. I mean, these people spend years trying to figure every scenario out. And to Nelson's point, it is the responsibility of the individual to have to prove that it's a primary residence, principal primary residence, tax assessor. You don't want to start receiving letters in the mail from the tax assessor and from the state and have to prove. It's, in my opinion, not worth it. But again, you're right. Unless you're going to use it as a principal primary residence, don't think that Prop 19 applies unless you will use it as a primary residence.
And you can also just email them directly. There's an email with different scenarios. They will respond back to you. So we can't cover them all, but they will respond, and you can send them any scenario you have. Just
And
FYI.
Carol's office is very good, by the way. She's
They
been
are.
very good at getting back to people and responding to scenarios and situations. So I'm glad you mentioned her.
Unfortunately, she's retiring next
I
month.
know, I know.
So I'm bummed too.
Yeah, I know. They're gonna, it's a big loss for the state, but that's okay, you know, but still. And if in LA County situation, the tax assessor is great as well. But yeah, there's a lot of, I think even the tax assessor has on LA County site has a section for Prop 19, if I recall.
Actually, speaking of that, I have a question. It says, can you recommend a website to get more detailed information specifically related to homeowners over 55 wanting to sell and buy a different property?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, there's several of them. One, I can off the top of my head, the tax assessor, if I recall correctly, the LA County tax assessor has a specific portion of the site for Prop 19. There's also a CAR resource that's really good. If you go onto the CAR website, there's like a legal Q&A section. And then what I would warn against though is don't go to some of the third-party sites that have like, they're more political in nature, like pro Prop 19, or, you know, you kind of sometimes don't know where you're at. And then finally, I have the actual text of the bill. If you're into that kind of thing, I can send you the actual text. And then finally, I guess, finally is I'm available anytime. I threw my email up there a while ago. I don't know if anybody ever saw it, but I'll do it again. And then I'll throw my cell phone number. I get text messages from members all the time asking certain questions about certain scenarios. I'm more than happy to answer them. And then, of course, if you are, I just threw my information there. If you are a member of the Greater Downey Association, you'll know that I do the government affairs report posted on our website. We have well, with COVID, we have a weekly GAD report now, but we have a lot of resources on our website as well, is my point, with the Greater Downey Association, so.
All right, guys, Louis, thank you so much. Just want to share I have put on the screen. We have Title Tuesday recordings, so if you want to go back to the past, you can see we have from the commercial training that we did, business planning, Steve Thomas from San Diego, the economist, one of the best ones, Paul Horn, social media. Every recording is here. Louis is going to be here in the afternoon. If you give me the okay, Louis, if we can put your face on this Title Tuesday. It's open for everybody. I mean, you don't need to be working with Pacific Coast Title to be part of these Title Tuesdays. Today's Thursday, but usually we do on Tuesday. So I want to thank everybody. I want to wish everybody Merry Christmas. Be safe and be careful. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Louis.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Thank you, Louis.
Thank you, Jorge.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for attending, guys.
Great info. Thank you so much.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you all. Take
Absolutely.
care.
Happy
pleasure.
holidays to everybody.
Happy holidays to you too.
Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Don't plan Christmas, so you don't need to plan a funeral.
Thank you.
Right?
You know, I by the way, just quickly, Jorge or whoever's on, I'm getting a lot. I'm looking in the chat window and I can't keep track of all the emails that people want
I
me to
will
send a
send you all
printout
that,
to.
Louis. I will email you the chat room, all the questions and the
Wonderful.
emails and everything,
Got
along
it.
with the recording. If I have your okay, can I put you on the YouTube channel on Title Tuesday?
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. Not a problem at all. Do that. That's fine.
If you can send me your picture, because we want to put your face.
I will do that for sure. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, guys. Thank
All
you so
right.
much.
Take care, all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia.
Thanks, Felicia. Thanks, Jorge.
George, we'll have a copy of the presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's gonna be added into this afternoon into Title Tuesday,
Okay, cool.
the video, and I emailed you guys the presentation already.
Thank you, Jorge.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you,
topic, man. Great topic.
Yeah, very important. So I guess I'll see you later, guys.
Yep, I'll see you later.
Okay, perfect.
All right, bye.